Here's Matt Powell to be a bigot against LGBT folks.
And some people will criticize videos like this, and they'll say, well, Matt, how could you shelter your kids? Don't you want them to learn about the world? Well, if a wolf attacked my child, I would defend my child. If a bear came out of the woods that we live in and attacked my family, I would shelter my family the best that I could.
Even if God sent the bear because your kids were making fun of a bald guy? You'd be interfering with God's will if you were to do that, Matt. Also, what do you mean, the woods that we live in? You live in the woods? Was small town America still not fundy enough for you? You had to go into the woods?
Well, they tell kids there's more than two genders. They invite drag queens to come and put on their little shows, their little performances in front of the little ones. Are you going to just sit there and let your son or daughter take in all of that disgusting filth?
Why are you showing footage of Chasten Buttigieg to illustrate school drag shows? Is that what they're like? Am I supposed to be scared of a school assembly where kids listen to a speech by the husband of the Secretary of Transportation? My biggest concern is that they'd be bored to death.
Or are you going to step up and be a hero to your child and shield them from propaganda, from misinformation about gender and about their existence? I grew up on a farm, and I learned extremely fast that there's only male and female, because we were taking care of cattle, taking care of horses, taking care of chickens, and helping these animals to be able to have offspring. And I'm telling you, when you see God's creation, you're not going to be convinced that a man could turn into an animal.
A man is already an animal. In what taxonomical kingdom do you think humans belong, if not Animalia? I hate to break it to you, Matt, but you're not a fun guy.
Or that gender is not binary. Of course it's binary. That's how reproduction even works.
Even Jesus had a more nuanced view of gender and sex than simply man plus woman equals baby. In Matthew 19:12, he says there are eunuchs who have been so from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let the one who is able to receive this receive it. While I'm sure Jesus didn't have the same conception of sex and gender as scientists have today, he was clearly okay with folks getting bottom surgery, at least for religious purposes.
People always say, oh, homeschooling, it's gonna make my kids weird. Well, at least they're not gonna think that men can get pregnant.
Nobody thinks that men can get pregnant according to the definition of man that Matt uses. Matt likely uses the definition that defines a man as someone who has an inseminational reproductive system and lacks a gestational reproductive system. I've never heard anyone say that such a person can get pregnant, at least not with current technology.
In schools, they're teaching kids this, and kids are believing it because they're impressionable.
No school is teaching that a person who has no uterus can get pregnant.
A child is very impressionable, and you could hurt them. And in the school system, the stuff they're telling the kids, it is hurting them. That's why they're turning out the way that they turn out. I saw a guy just the other day, he thought he was a wolf.
Is this guy in the room with us now, Matt? Even if you did meet someone who claimed to be a wolf, I doubt they meant it in the sense that they believed that if their DNA were sent to a lab, the results would say that it's wolf DNA.
I saw a girl a few weeks ago, thought that she was a fish.
Where are you seeing these folks? Are they also in the woods?
The public school system of Nazi Germany corrupted so many youth, and it made them feel like they were really it. They were the generation that was going to set everything straight, and they ultimately turned into terrorists. A lot of people in the Nazi army killed Jews, they killed Christians, they killed all sorts of people during the Holocaust.
Matt makes it sound like Christians were on the hit list just like Jews were. He probably thinks that the folks who went around with the words Gott mit uns on their belts were atheists.
And they thought that they were a superior race because they were being taught Darwinian evolution. They believed that we all descended from rats and that the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Norwegians were the most evolved.
Well, they weren't studying evolution very closely if they came to those conclusions, because evolutionary science teaches neither of those things. We didn't descend from rats because rodents and primates are cousin orders. We share a common mammalian ancestor, but neither order descended from the other. Also, it's nonsense to say that any species is more evolved than any other, because every species that currently exists has been evolving for the same amount of time as any other. Additionally, I'm getting mixed messages from Matt. He says, evolution says we evolved from rats, as if it deflates the dignity of humans. But also some of these rat descendants are the most evolved, which I guess is also bad because it makes those people prideful. Which is it? Are Norwegians gross rat descendants, or are they awesome Ubermensch? By the way, the guy in charge of Germany at the time wrote that he didn't believe that animals could evolve into other animals. He said the fox remains always a fox, the goose remains a goose, and the tiger will retain the character of a tiger. Expounding that view is the opposite of teaching that we evolved from other animals. Ironically, the views the German government of the 1930s had about trans people were practically indiscernible from Matt's views about them. The very first of many book burnings was of the books held by the Institut für Sexualwissenschaft, which is one of the leading institutions, if not the top institution, researching LGBT people and helping trans folks transition. If Matt had been in charge, he would have done the same thing to that research institution that the Sturmabteilung did, if not worse. Also, when someone tried to explain this to J.K. Rowling, she first made fun of the person, then when provided with proof, she moved the goalpost.
And don't be offended, don't be upset when somebody says, "You're bigoted." Because the real bigots are the ones who are cowering down and not saying anything. These drag queens that come into schools, they're trying to spew their own filth onto little children.
What does that mean? The whole point of the drag queen story time is to teach kids not to be bigoted against folks who are gender nonconforming. How is teaching kids not to be bigoted the real bigotry?
They get a thrill, just like pedophiles do, about corrupting the minds of children.
Citation needed. How do you know this, Matt? Can you read minds?
They are absolutely after the kids. That's not a conspiracy theory.
What does after the kids mean? I suspect he means several things, ranging from the most salacious to simply teaching them not to be bigoted against folks who are gender nonconforming.
But I guess that just kind of speaks to the kind of person Matt Powell actually is. Why anyone shares a stage with an idiot like that, I've got no, I know, there's an entertainment value, but he is a mess. Scientifically speaking, he's got little to no credentials.
My wife actually purchased me this plaque, and it says, "A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor." Sometimes it might be hard to pull your kids out of a public school system or to have these conversations with them. But you've got to keep in mind, there are weirdos that try to have these conversations with your kids.
Yeah, the weirdest folks will even knock on your door to tell you and your kids the good news.
And fill them with lies. They want to brainwash your children. When people say, "Oh, don't shelter your kids. Don't worry about them." When they say to take the walls of protection down and just let people wreak havoc with your children, that should be a red flag to you.
Abstaining from telling your kids to avert their eyes whenever they see a gender nonconforming person is not the same as letting them do whatever they want, or exposing them to things that are actually inappropriate.
And you should not listen to them, because those people are just as delusional as the transgender advocates that we see all over the streets of America now.
What's the delusion specifically? I know you think that they're teaching people that they can change from being able to make sperm to being able to make eggs or vice versa, but I guarantee you that nobody actually believes that or claims that. If that passage were true, nobody raised Christian would ever deconvert. To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.